Dr. Bones, you're live. Can we get a mic check from you?
Buy guns, punch fascists in the face, and prepare for the inevitable ecological collapse by making your own lives more beautiful than anything this rotten society could give you.
Fuck yeah, you're live.
Okay, beautiful.
Thank you. We're all adults here, mostly. So.
Well, I'm going to say fuck. I mean, you're not going to stop that.
I should have said this at the very beginning, but yes, we're going to use words. So, Bones, thank you so much for jumping on this thing, man. I know you're neck deep in so much shit right now. Not shit in a bad way, but you've got a lot of projects that you're working on. We don't necessarily need to get into that right now, but I thank you so much for this.
It's a pleasure to have the tropical humidity of Florida finally meld with the wonderful potato lands. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So I'm just going to I'm going to do a really quick introduction here to you so people can get a little glimpse into who you are.
You mean the face isn't enough? This doesn't
no, I know. That should be enough.
What? Do you think I put these patches on this jacket just for fun? God damn it.
All right, we got Dr. Bones, and he is a Gonzo journalist, political theorist, and conjurer who believes true individuality can only flourish when the means of existence are shared by all. A Florida native and a hoodoo practitioner, he summons pure vitriol, straight narrative, and sorcerous wisdom into a potent blend of poltergasmic politics and Gonzo journalism. Bones is the author of Curse Your Boss, Hex the State, Take Back the World. He is the co-host, of the Guillotine podcast and regularly writes for Gods&Radicals Press, a site of beautiful resistance. Thank you, Bones, for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, sir.
Yes. I don't know how to start this thing with you because there's just so much we could get into. I think we've had 2 previous episodes where we have talked, and I think the first one was more like discussing egoism, Max Stirner's philosophy, and then I think the second one we kind of got more into belief systems and ideologies, and then I think we got into your conjuring, your practice. I don't know how to describe it, but I think to begin, I'm gonna pull this up real quick, see if I can get this going. I don't think you're gonna be able to see it on your end, Bones, but I'm gonna play. I hope it'll play. Let's see here. You were on InfoWars recently.
Yes, I was.
You were. Alex Jones mentioned you. Let's see if we'll. I don't know if you can hear this, but it'll be like a minute, and then we'll jump back into it. Let me play this real quick.
Here's the headline: Communists planning armed insurrection on Twitter, especially if Kavanaugh is confirmed, and Twitter lets them. Just like World Star Hip Hop can, have snuff films on there, racial killing attacks, that's okay, but we're banned. Dr. Bones, the co-host of the Far Leftist podcast, The Guillotine, started the conversation going with his 5,000 plus Twitter followers. Hey, quick little question for the military-minded lefties. Should leftists train organize in an insurgent focus where they blend into civilian population for potential attacks on a more militia structure focused on holding and maintaining turf? And then it goes into planning the ambushes and assassinations. Let me just say, I hope not to go down this road, but if they do go down that road, you have all been lazed, my friends. You have all, they're so stupid. Now,
okay, did you hear that? Did you hear that, Bones?
Yeah, the guy can't even. I love how he struggled to read the basic. It's a Texas education. I'm not surprised that Alex Jones doesn't know his dick from his asshole, but I at least expected for him to have basic reading comprehension. But yeah, it was a great pleasure to have Alex talk about me. I was super excited.
Yeah, trying to pull your face back up, Jordan. I don't know how to get his face back up. I'm sorry. I'm so confused right now. 1 second. I'm sorry.
Oh, geez.
I am an amateur at this. There we go. Thank you so much. I don't even know how to use this goddamn computer. Okay. So what was the context of that? Why did Alex Jones how did he find out about you? What was the nature of that tweet that you put out?
Well, because the right wing is very desperate for money. You see, I put that tweet out in response. If Alex Jones had actually bothered to listen to our show, The Guillotine, which is great. I think everybody here should listen to it. So we were discussing how the 3%er militias actually got on InfoWars And we're talking about how they've started a new program called the Spartan Training Program. And so what they're doing is they're going into communities, they're training patriots how to use guns, how to set up security checkpoints, how to run assault teams, how to start neighborhood watches. Basically, they are starting militias across the country directly answerable to the president. And they mentioned several times about killing leftists. So my question was a simple one. Considering where the left is at militarily, is it better for us to organize along the idea of holding territory or more insurgent-based tactics where we sort of bleed into the population and then strike out where need be? It got picked up by Far Right Watch, which is actually run by a group of Nazis in California. That story actually got ripped off from them by a site called PJ Media. Then it went to Drudge Report, and then it sort of went viral in the right-leaning sphere because they are afraid. Their vision of a leftist is a meek, mild person, and that ain't me. Florida is absolutely batshit insane. We walk around with guns all the fucking time, and thanks to the castle doctrine, if anyone comes in your home, you can kill them. The idea is that we are gone in American political discourse. Self-defense is a necessity, especially with everything that has happened over the past 15 days.
Yeah, let's go over what's going on in the past 15 days. I just last week or a week ago, I had an interview with a guy named Spencer Sunshine. I don't think that's his real name, but Spencer Sunshine, he's a far-right researcher. He's been studying far-right movements for decades at this point. We were discussing the Proud Boys. Proud Boys is a gang, or as Gavin McInnes, he describes it as a gang. He's the leader of it. But he also describes it as a fraternity, a Western chauvinist fraternity.
Somehow that's a good thing. Yeah,
right.
Go figure.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you know, Trump just came out as a nationalist recently, so it's in fashion apparently.
Well, you just saw the election in Brazil.
Yeah, the results just came in. The
same guy that says he is in favor of a military dictatorship, that not enough people were tortured and murdered during the last dictatorship, how he would rather have his son dead than be gay, who has threatened to rape women to their face. Yes, he is now the president of the most populated nation in South America.
Right. There has been a wave of right-wing populism, violence. Speaking of the Proud Boy thing, and just to kind of give people context, they were at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which that woman that was protesting got ran over by a right-winger. Murdered, yes. And then the Proud Boys. So apparently, what I understand, and clarify this if I'm incorrect, Bones, but it was in New York City, the Metropolitan Republican Club. This is a Republican club. This isn't some far right fringe group. This is mainstream conservatism in the United States. Invited Gavin McInnes to speak at their club. And I guess he was reenacting, or how did he say it?
He was reenacting the assassination of a prominent Japanese socialist. The gentleman in question was the head of the Japanese Socialist Party, who was executed by a young idealist nationalist who ran on stage with a samurai sword and plunged it into his stomach. They were recreating that and celebrating it. Now, what I find so funny about that is, remember, this is at a literal Republican club. Imagine, if you will, if the DSA said they were having a reenactment of the execution of the Romanovs, with fake machine guns. I can bring a little baby up here, too. Come on, we're going to gun him. They would lose their absolute shit. And yet somehow, because the right has such a fine control of the narrative, all of that was ignored. New York City was forced to comment on the fact that a anarchist A was spray painted on their club door as if it fucking mattered. And the police only did anything after leftist journalists raised a stink which caught on to the capitalist media and showed that the NYC wasn't doing anything. In fact, the New York police allowed the Proud Boys to take a group photo with blood on their hands after they had beaten leftist protesters.
Right. That seems to be the trend, right? The sort of rise of right-wing violence. And then we could also mention, he's been hashtag MAGA bomber, Make America Great Again bomber, the guy, he's in Florida, right? The alleged guy? Yeah.
You saw that van. You know that van is from Florida. Look at the fucking, come on now. You know that shit is from Florida.
Right.
Of course he is.
Yeah, and he was sending it out to it was George Soros.
With his fucking fingerprints. I mean, for the love of Christ, you send bombs out to 11 people and you don't think to wear fucking gloves? And they track the motherfucker on his cell phone data. So I mean, yeah, no one's calling him a great criminal, but I mean, yeah, holy shit, just absolutely boggling.
Right, and then you have, I guess, Trump was being kind of questioned or asked questions by the press, and I think a CNN reporter said something like, "Can you like maybe tone down your rhetoric? Maybe this is sort of fueling some of these." And he says, "No, I'm going to tone up my rhetoric." I don't know what that means in a very Trumpian way. We all kind of know what he's getting at.
He also flatly denied the fact that his face was on the van. When they asked him about it, he said, "I have heard that. I'm not sure if that's true. I have heard he preferred me to some other people." And this is where the Democrats are getting fucked up, because this isn't a game. It isn't a school debate where the most intelligent point wins. It's about force. And the idea of the news cycle isn't about truth. It's about reestablishing the opinions of your base, your street warriors, making them feel good, making them feel right. Look at Benito Mussolini. Not a lot of people know, started out as a newspaper reporter. He was a newspaper reporter. And he came out for Italy as a soldier in World War I. So he was writing his war diaries in the newspaper. And he was integrating all these different things about Italian nationalism. Everybody ate it up. I mean, Mussolini basically took the halls of power just talking information and ideas. His black shirts eventually spread out, but to think that, imagine, for instance, if Paul Watson, or whatever the fuck his name is, somehow created a street movement that brought him to the halls of the White House, and that's what happened with Benito Mussolini. And that is what we are seeing with the Proud Boys. They are a literal political street gang that have engaged in violent terrorism. The same with Patriot Front. Patriot Front is an openly fascist organization that attacked an ICE encampment. And the Democrats, they don't have answers for this. Most recently, the synagogue shooter, I saw Rachel Maddow just did a piece about, there's often violence on both sides. There was another journalist for Think Progress that kept referring to all this as gun violence, completely ignoring the fact that the man said before he started shooting, all Jews must die. So if you're trying to frame this as a policy issue, when we are in the middle of a right-leaning insurgency, is not only disingenuous, but it is dangerous, and you are putting people's lives at risk.
Yeah, I just want to talk about that. Like, why we want to sort of pin it on Trump, right? That's pretty easy to do. You could say that he's sort of fomenting a lot of this, or he's kind of stoking the flames of kind of nationalist right-wing sentiment in the country, right? I feel like Trump is a symptom of something. He's not the cause of anything.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing a rise in this kind of violence, and really there has been little to nothing done to undermine. I think a lot of people assume that, say, like law enforcement or something is going to step in and deal with all these really violent militias that are forming. Why isn't that the case?
Because we've caught police officers not only with white supremacist tattoos, we've caught them with Proud Boy affiliation. When a ruling group, let me put it this way. All right. Back in the 1950s, if you were born a white male, you kind of had an easy line to the top. You went to college, maybe you got a job at the same factory your dad worked out. Life was good. All of a sudden, as capitalism and the state has begun to fall, the privileges that were given to the ruling minority are starting to evaporate. And when that happens, the ruling minority gets scared. We actually saw this same thing in Iraq when the Americans came in. The former ruling group feels like they are under attack and threatened. They are worried about their privileges being taken away. As a resident of the South, this is actually what kept poor white Southerners from uniting with slaves. There were multiple insurrections where they did unite, and you had the planter class literally. There's an entire interesting book how multiple plantation owners, what they would do is they would hire very cruel white taskmasters. And so they would literally allow this taskmaster to beat the slaves, to torture them, to everything like that. And every now and then the plantation owner would come out and say, "Oh, no, no, God, what are you doing?" And so he bred resentment in the poor white population, loyalty among his own slaves. They were constantly playing one off the other. Instead of realizing that their privileges have been created by a system that is ultimately designed to rob them of everything, they are holding on to their last bit of privileges with a death grip because they are afraid that they will receive the same treatment that they have inflicted upon everybody else. And you will see that again and again in the South with white-black relations. Most white Southerners know what they did to black people. And their overarching fear is that essentially they'll get revenge. And that's why they're overly violent. That's why they're overly militant. They know they're wrong. They know they stole everything. They know they tortured people. They're afraid of being brought to justice.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like this, in the first half of this event, we were talking about the ecological crisis, the climate crisis. And simultaneously, while all of this is happening, we're seeing a resurgence of right-wing violence. We just discussed the neo-fascist, now elected leader of Brazil. We've seen right-wing populism all across the planet. United States is not the only place that's experiencing this. It's so crazy at a time when you expect people to really kind of pull their heads out of their asses. It's the time when they seem to invest the most energy into bullshit narratives.
Why would you expect that?
Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't or wouldn't. I guess I'm just saying I'm sort of speaking on behalf of the devil here.
Do you know why I carry a revolver?
Why?
When your adrenaline starts pumping, your fine motor skills go down. Your critical thinking goes down. So let's say you've got a pistol and you have a jam. Now, unless you've trained very well, your fingers do not have the dexterity that they've had while you've been at the range. You may be incapable of it. You may be incapable of tying your shoes, even though you know how to do it just because the adrenaline is going. With a revolver, no matter how scared I am, no matter how worried, I pull, end of story. In the same way that when humanity is in a crisis, we don't make clear decisions. That's not what we do. We're literally running on pure stress and fear. And that is why normally, whoever gives us the best, most comforting answer wins. So look at all these stressed out white people. All of a sudden somebody, "Oh, you're special. You're a conqueror. You're this, you're that. Oh, everyone's against men. That's what it is. Oh, you can't get laid? That's because it's feminists. It's not you. You're not an asshole. No, it's the world." And so it goes. It's the same thing. It's the same thing that just happened in Brazil. It's the same thing we're seeing now. People are scared. People are worried. It's Maslow's hierarchy. People forget that politics runs on individual psychology. People are scared, and when that bottom line of the pyramid is not met, they will go to the first person that does. Remember, for instance, one of the things I find interesting, and we talked about this on the guillotine tonight. Let's look at Rojava. Rojava is a secular revolution with on-the-ground, street-level communism. Women have full rights. In fact, they are so committed to destroying patriarchy that a male officer cannot give a female officer an order. They are committed to an entire social and ecological revolution. On the other side of the battlefield, you have Daesh, ISIS. You have people flying from all over the world to join these people committed to the most authoritarian death cult with the full knowledge that they will die. Rojava is saying we want a better life. ISIS is saying we will grant you a glorious death. And both sides aren't running out of people that are willing to fight for that.
In your last, not the one that you did tonight, but the last episode of The Guillotine, you and Brett did a segment about the IPCC report. Of course, we just went over that in the last interview with Dar. But in that, you discussed the dire quality of that report. And then you get into mutual aid. You discuss Rojava, very, in that region where so much chaos and so many terrible things are happening and have been going on for years now, that one little glimmer of hope has sort of emerged out of that.
Well, they've been organizing for 20 plus years.
Oh, yeah.
We have to remember. So these people, one of the things I find interesting about the revolution in Rojava, there was a certain point where PKK operatives were basically expected to pay for their own revolutionary activities. There was no Soviet Union to give them money. There was no third party. A lot of people had to work jobs, save money to buy arms for comrades. 20 plus years of hardcore repression, everything like that. So yeah, their victory is even more impressive.
Sure, right. Well, that could be said about the Spanish anarchists during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
They had been practicing some form of anarchism for generations before, the war actually broke out, in which they could try, from what I understand, to carve out some autonomous space within Catalonia, right? So it's a lot of times the work is behind the scenes. It's not glamorous. It's difficult, right? And I just want to ask, what is some of that work? Because discussing the ecological crisis, discussing the climate crisis, who knows what the fuck's going to happen, right? We don't know. We can.
We know it's going to be bad.
Well, of course, but we don't. We don't know how soon. We don't know definitively, absolutely, with 100% of our knowledge, what exactly is going to happen. But we can know what we choose to do in the time we have, right? My whole thing has been to ask people to think a little outside of what they consider politics as usual, right? Understanding something like mutual aid, understanding anarchism, understanding communism, understanding this in a new light, right? Just want to ask, how mutual aid works. How can we kind of imagine something like that? What does it ask of us as individuals? Just your kind of thoughts on that.
Well, that's kind of a pretty big fucking question, and multiple people have written books yay big on said things. So I'll say this. To me, mutual aid stems from my love of individuals. I love people. I want to care for people. I want to see them do well. So I want to align with those people and hope that we can both work out something to where we both prosper and just live our lives beautifully. Mutual aid specifically in this standpoint is something similar to Floridian hurricane season. I was a small child when Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida. It was a Category 5 hurricane and absolutely devastated the state. And so, living in Florida, you always had in the back of your head that there was a climactic event that could literally destroy everything. My father's house was actually destroyed by her. I saw everything that my father worked for, his house utterly demolished by a hurricane. The blink of an eye, everything he saved for, everything he fought for, gone. And so that stays with you. This idea that life is a very thin rope. In Florida as well, we have many things down here that can kill you. I've seen a person actually killed by an alligator. I've seen a human being eaten by an animal. And so that changes your perspective on things. You realize how small and fragile we really are. And in my own spirituality and everything like that, I realized that my own land that speaks to me, the prairies, the savannas, the swamps, the marshes, the beaches, it seems like this land will give everything to anyone that asks, including anything that wants to kill you. So you have to be smart. You have to prepare. And so when I see these people, they talk about climate catastrophe and how we can reorganize society. they're kind of missing the point. Because if you think the same society that got us to the same fucking point we're in is going to somehow work itself out of it, you're chasing a fool's dream. You, where you are, should be looking to survive the new earth that's coming. The earth is not dying. You can't kill the earth. It is changing. It is adapting. And humanity will either adapt or it won't. The human species is a blip in the eye. But we can survive. And again, especially as leftists, we're talking about a planet that is going to see millions of climate refugees, entire cities disappear beneath the waves. Everything that we have ever encountered is going to be turned on its head. And so we have to prepare. I have argued for a leftism, not just of labor politics, of strikes, of protests, but of water filters, of solar panels, of community, of buying land. I don't think that the society that got us in this place or the same people that deny this even exists are going to get out of it. At this stage in the game, it doesn't matter what the fuck we do, Miami is going under. Period. So if you're in Miami, you can pretend that that's not the reality, or you can fucking do something about it. I think the time has come. A new earth is coming. The people that learn to adapt to it and to survive in it will essentially be in the same place that the mammals were at the death of the dinosaurs. The great cities are going away. Chaos, strife, discord, violence, competition over resources, over fresh water. The majority of humanity will be left with their fucking pants down. Now, we could hole ourselves away in some private little chamber like these prepper types with machine guns and hope that we can mow everybody down that we don't like. Or we can start building a new world today. We can start building structures for survival. We can start building communities for survival so that when the inevitable happens, we can thrive, we can grow. And just like any other animal, learn to adapt and claim the new earth just the same as we have before.
Is there anything like that going on currently? Organizing to kind of deal with this? I mean, is it...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mutual Aid Disaster Network, I think it is. I think their abbreviation is MAD. Either way, they're going to fucking kill me for this. So, I mean, I'm sorry I fucked it up. But yeah, these people are a group of like anarchists and leftists. They flew into Puerto Rico. They fucking set up solar panels. The hurricane before the one that just hit Florida, they were flying in supplies, okay? While the police were basically saying, hey, fucking good luck, while the preppers were coming out and shutting down their neighborhoods with guns and saying, we're going to kill anyone that comes near it. These motherfuckers were collecting supplies all over the country and flying them in. When the hurricane hit where I live, we came together and basically made an impromptu community of resource sharing. There's an organization called the Socialist Rifle Association that is not only training comrades in a non-tendency format, communists, anarchists, democratic socialists, all stripes of leftists, going to ranges, learning how to shoot, but also they are doing disaster relief. They are driving into disaster-ridden communities, bringing supplies, helping to create these structures where people can survive. During Katrina, the aftermath, there were actually white supremacist gangs that were going around basically killing people. Leftists from Texas flew into New Orleans, got in and defended communities, primarily black communities that were being terrorized by these white militia types. AR-15 to AR-15. You make a fucking move, we're going to hurt you. They were setting up food, they were setting up clean water, and they were setting up self-defense. As the state continues to pull away, as capitalism continues to crumble, as the rich either put their money in a fucking spaceship to leave us to die, or private little gated in enclaves, it will be up to us to save one another.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense. I just don't know where to go from here. I want to kind of circle back to this right-wing thing because I think, again, as the narratives that we have been living within, the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves don't make sense anymore.
No.
Right? So this is where fascism comes in. This is where nationalism comes in. This is where this strong man, this man will pull us out of here, out of this situation. We just have to dedicate, and then there's all this identity bullshit comes into play, like I identify with a white race, which of course is a social construct in and of itself, but it's very real, and people sense it's real, and they feel it's real.
Because it's something, when you are a person with no education, whose mother is strung out on meth, and you're living in a piece of shit trailer that you don't own, when you have nothing, and you will never have anything, you can sleep soundly knowing that you are part of some victorious Aryan race. What the fuck it is. It's the same thing that telling people they're chosen by God, that they're going to be taken up in the fucking rapture. It's the same fucking thing. It's a secular religion. Mussolini, when he was writing the Doctrine of Fashion, even called it that, a secular religion. That the state was the new religion. In this, it's the race is the new religion. American exceptionalism is a religion. I mean, imagine looking at the history of the world and thinking that one country was somehow going to... But then again, these are the same people that believe that Israel is honest to God, chosen by the same divine being that somehow set every particle and every atom in place. It's all emotional. It's all feelings. It's all ideology that makes the individual disappear and instead offers them a vessel that they can fill. Same way with soldiers. You crush the individuality and you're a Marine. And while you may not be an individual, look at all the wonderful benefits you get. Oh, thank you for your service, sir. Oh, what a hero. Why don't we salute that man? It's the same thing humanity's been doing. I take a very Gnostic opinion on this because ultimately, this whole drive towards fascism isn't anything new. It's the same death drive, the same desire to belong that ran right along behind the Roman Empire. Every empire. The idea that you were taking part in something that was bigger than yourself, and therefore, if you died, it was in service to this something else. Humanity has repeated this lesson again and again. And as an egoist, I put no faith in them ever learning it.
So as an egoist, what would you say for people that do want to change that? I mean, if this repeats itself over and over and over again, and we are facing this crisis of such magnitude, a global crisis, I mean, well, what do we do to counter these narratives? It seems to me, and this is something you point to, these far-right fascists, these white nationalists, they're much more organized than leftists, than people that actually want to live in a better world, right? They don't want to exist in this horrible nightmare. How do you counter that? Like, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What are you promoting to kind of counter that?
You build your own world. Instead of constantly reacting, which is so much of what the left gets stuck into. So see, every time a white nationalist shows up to a university, we have to be there to shut them down. But why aren't we there before? When a nationalist shows up to a community, we rush in. Why weren't we there before? There are tons of organizations that are doing this. There are organizations that are running food drives. There are tenants unions fighting tooth and nail. Effectively, we need to declare war on the world and carve out our own spaces. Because that's what the fascists are doing. As the state and capitalism crumbles away, the vacuum of power is left. The fascists are claiming all the space that the state had. The streets are open. We can take those streets. We can organize our communities. We don't have to constantly react. It's a question of, are we against something or are we for something? My organizing as an egoist is very simple. I want to live my life. I want to be free. I want to unite with other people that want to be free. One of my biggest inspirations for my own radicalism are the Seminoles and the Maroon communities, not only in the United States, but in the Caribbean. So you had people that were able to self-rescue from plantations and create entirely new communities. But they didn't just create those communities. They attacked the plantations. The Seminoles were a multiracial tribe that were very democratic, to the point where the United States said that signing a treaty with them was worthless because no one individual could decide anything for the tribe. They fought a guerrilla war against the United States for 40 years because their way of life was important and they wanted to live their life. It wasn't a question of a revolution. It was a question of I matter and I will live no matter what anyone does to me. That I will not sell out this person that I love. That I will not leave this land that I love. I must live. And so that's, to me, where we find ourselves today. Is your life valuable? Or is the revolution valuable? Are your loved ones valuable? Or are they only valuable as workers?
Right. Bones, we have approached about 50 minutes here. I think we're going to open this up to a Q&A. Did you have anything else that you would like to say before we get into questions?
I think everyone should buy a gun, take a medic class, start planting a garden, and start learning witchcraft.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to get into the whole witchcraft conjuring thing. That would be another hour. So if people have questions about that, we are kind of open. I don't want to keep everybody here for 3 hours, but
I summon dead people, folks.
Exactly. This is Dr. Bones here. Okay, so I think we're gonna, if anybody in the audience, does anybody have a question? And then we'll start with that. We got Bowen. All right. Yes. You've talked to Bowen previously. He interviewed you for the Times News here in Twin Falls.
Hell yeah, fellow journalist. So I get to see the face behind the... Oh, yeah, there you go. What's up, dog?
How are you doing, Dr. Bones? It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, comrade. I really dug the article, and I noticed the narrative slipped in there. I like that very much.
Yeah, I took a note out of your page. Anyways, I loved our conversation. What I imagined being a 30-minute interview turned into 2 hours.
It did.
It was great. And we touched on the magic. How does somebody get into hoodoo?
I'm currently writing a book on literally just that because I got stuck recommending people all these different books. Mm-hmm. Because my thing is this. You can go online and you can see these different spells and stuff like that will tell you how to put a hex on your boss, how to get fucked at a party, everything like that. But they don't teach you the underlying metaphysics, the real interaction with the spiritual world. There are things that you won't learn. Like, for instance, in my book, there's a lesson. I want you to do a spell on someone else's property. Why? I want you to learn what it is like to do magic where you aren't supposed to be. Because then you can do magic anywhere. And this is, back in the day, people were putting curses and they were burying these jars in people's yards. The old school conjurers were able to operate anywhere. Mm-hmm. I would say, I often caution people, I think that if you really want to be a great sorcerer, your first learning path should be shamanism, which I kind of cover in my book a little bit. But if you want straight hoodoo spells, Kat Yonwood's hoodoo herb and root magic. It's almost like an encyclopedia of every different kind of herb and root you can imagine in North America, how they're used. Blood in the Bayou by Dr. Sereau, which is a Louisiana conjurer that I met at Devil's Elbow Swamp. We got drunk. he was looking for these special trees that had been to the moon. Something like straight out of a Florida Man story. I mean, it was great. Those two would be very good. But if you want spells that you can use, but also a history book, I would recommend the book The Sporting Life by Professor Charles Porterfield. It is not only a guide to magic, but it is a history how magic has been used by sex workers, drug dealers, people that have lived on the outside of the law, the margins. It's an incredible history of how this entire community existed and how the occult was a key aspect of it. For anyone listening, I'll mention the spell that I gave you. Anyone listening, a very, very easy hoodoo spell you can do tomorrow. If your boss is either presents or defines himself as a man, you can grab a King of Hearts. If your boss presents or defines themselves as a woman, you can grab a Queen of Hearts. If they are a non-binary person, you can grab, if you're a man, just grab the Queen of Hearts. If you're a woman, just grab the King of Hearts. Get your boss's full name. Write it down on the card. Get your boss's birthday. Write it down on the card. Take that card and put it in your shoe on your dominant foot. That will effectively have you walking over your boss, and you will see an effect very quickly about how you seem to have the upper hand in the majority of situations dealing with them. But yeah, those books, grab them and start putting hexes on your boss. Fuck the capitalists.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Bones. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay, I'm going to read a question here from the live stream. Turn this back around. All right. This one is from Antonio. I think he asked a question in the last part. Dr. Bones, are you considering the militarization of the police? Aren't the militaries and police preparing for this sort of unrest? The military has drones and satellites now, not muskets.
Oh, Jesus. Wow, it's almost... I actually did an article on this. The majority of Americans don't know that the United States has officially entered a peace process with the Taliban. After X amount of years, after X amount of blood, after X amount of corpses, after X amount of money, the United States government, with the most technologically sophisticated military force the world has ever seen, was unable to beat a series of caves and AK-47s. The greatest myth that has ever been fed to the American people is that the United States military is unconquerable. They are being defeated as we speak in Iraq and Afghanistan. There is no victory there. The United States is suing for peace, and they are not only suing for peace, they are doing it with the Taliban without the Afghan government. There are tons of movements that have faced repression, violence. The same thing was said in Vietnam. Oh, this isn't muskets. They were dumping Agent Orange on these motherfuckers, and still they fought. It's the idea that any technology is the end-all, be-all, and can end armed conflict is simply a myth. And my big thing would be, if you're going to say that and not, mind you, analyze any current military conflicts, you have to ask yourself who put that thought in your head. Because in counterinsurgency manual after counterinsurgency manual, the United States government has said that they are unequipped to fight an asymmetrical war. That the United States, by its sheer military creation, cannot fight an asymmetrical war. Now, these are different rules. I'm not saying that the left is somehow going to roll up on tanks and take DC. And in fact, I'm advocating for self-defense. I am advocating for the creation of armed communities that can provide for the working class, where the state and capitalism is leaving them to die, as in Flint, as in Detroit. The idea that those people are untouchable is frankly false. And it only sort of speaks to the amazing amount of garrison mindset that has been put in the United States. Really, the article, if anybody wants to see the data, if anybody wants to see the cold hard data, because I'm a journalist and not an ideologue, I did an article. It's called, Yes, the Left Can Actually Win Militarily. Look it up. I have quotes. I have links. Be the judge.
All right, thank you. Do we have another question from the audience at all? Anybody got a question? No. Okay.
What the fuck?
Yeah, we got some interesting ones in the chat. We'll do a second one here. We got another one from Dominic from the last. He had a question for Dar earlier. Dr. Bones, could you speak more on the merits of a cellular network and how such a structure is uniquely positioned to be resilient against repression?
Sure. Back during the 90s, the United States was running something called Operation Backwoods. And essentially, it was trying to break up the radical green environmentalists. ELF and ALF. These people were attacking with direct militant action, fire, all these capitalist developments. And the United States found something interesting, that these people did not organize like a normal revolutionary organization. These people were organized in cells that did not communicate with one another, that did not know one another. The United States government is used to hierarchical organizations, i.e. kill the head and you kill the body. These things had no head. And in fact, they had no body. So you could have a cell of people that identified with ELF's ideology in California, and they had no connection to anybody else. You could grab that person, you could torture them. They couldn't give you any information because they didn't know anything. In fact, we see the same method of organization across Europe and South America with an anarchist organization called the Informal Anarchist Federation. And what they do is they will issue a call to action. So for attacks in remembrance of fallen anarchists, the call went out. Now, there was no hierarchy. There was no chain of command. If you wanted to do it, you did it. This unleashed attacks across the globe, something not covered in the media. Fire bombings, arson attacks, explosives, shootings, all across the world. Anarchists rose up in militant action against state targets. The cells retreated back into the darkness. They weren't attached to any movement. They weren't attached to any party. The cells often changed names. So maybe they did one attack as something, they did another attack as another. There was no one to capture. And even if you captured one cell, that cell was unable to name anybody else. So when the state really gets its feet in the game and starts torturing people, it's useless. In fact, if you want a better understanding of it, you can look at a Marxist put out by the African National Congress, which was a manual on secret work, which is how they built all these different cells. You can read multiple military manuals on how to set up these cells. The cellular structure allows for the state to effectively destroy multiple cells, but the whole organization still remains. And in a country where the left is outnumbered by fascists, where the left is outnumbered by a right-friendly state, it is those kind of tactics and that kind of repression that we should expect and start preparing for.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question in the audience?
Damn, what the fuck? Put that camera over there. I want to look at these people.
Well, I will do that, but I'll read another question here, and you can look at the audience while you.
Oh yeah, I want to look at these people. I want to get. I'm looking at that guy. Nice mustache. Yeah, little soul patch there. I'm about it. All right, yeah, that's cool.
All right, Bones. Here we go.
Whoa, I'm seeing like an autumn-colored shirt out there. All right.
Yeah,
dude.
there's Lauren.
Yep, that's you. Yep, there you go. All right, that's cool. All right.
Okay.
I know y'all got snow up there. That's something. Frozen water, is that correct? What y'all got up there?
We will
never...
be. Yeah. Not yet, but soon. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Gross. Fuck that.
All right. I'll just read this from it's from Rob. Oh, you actually he interviewed you for his show Moving Forward.
Okay.
Pierre and Rob Simetz. Okay. How can we get over left purity when building effective movements? I feel like this is a big obstacle on the left when we are facing. Yeah.
It is happening now. There is a new movement, and when I say new movement, I'm talking did not exist last year. There is a new movement in the left that has decided that fighting over dead white men that wrote books 100 years ago isn't exactly helping us. It is understanding that we all hate racists. We all hate our bosses. And while we may have some different ideas about the future, maybe we should start organizing for our lives now. I often make the case that what's the number? 1 in 4 Americans will get cancer in their lifetime. So just looking at this room, for instance, quite a few people there, I'd say. The odds are that one of the people in that room right now will probably die before age 70 due to cancer. So at least one person in that room probably won't see the fruition of any dreams that they really hoped on. And they'll probably die, if they're working class, a death isolated and alone with no health care on a hospital bed. So when you put it like that, your dreams of a socialist nation spanning 300 million people are put into the exact perspective they should be. People are dying right now. The left is beginning to understand that. And we're beginning to understand that we have a lot more in common than we have apart. And even tonight on the guillotine, we had a caller ask, how can we stop this sectarianism? And a whole bunch of people have said that now they are going to actively start shutting it down. When we see a person shitting on anarchists, we're going to say, you are putting people's lives at risk. When we see an anarchist shitting on Leninists, we are going to say, you are putting people's lives at risk. The idea that in a nation of 300 million people, that one ideology is going to somehow sway all these people is, frankly, a child's fantasy. Not only that, it would involve one of the most savage, bloodthirsty, and frankly, horrible civil wars the world has ever seen. We are being attacked now. People are dying now. Trans people are being erased now. Women are being attacked now. Disabled people are being removed from society now. If we care about these people, if we love these people as human beings and not as workers, then we need to do something to protect them. And the simple question is, if you want to protect these people, we need to put aside our differences and start organizing for that. And luckily, and again, this is a new development, the left is coming around, especially this year. And we are seeing something that has not been seen in this country ever.
All right. Well, I think we're about done here. Bones, thank you so much for taking the time. Do you have any last words before we go?
Let's see.
Oh, sorry. Well, let's do one. Can we do one more question? Are you cool with
I'm all
one more?
about it. Hell yeah.
Okay, one more question. Skylar, yes. Dr. Bones, any thoughts on how Bitcoin or cryptocurrency could be used to decentralize currency or power?
I think cryptocurrency has a lot of potential. However, the sad thing is, especially you look at Bitcoin, the majority of people owning it aren't these, Matrix-esque libertarians. They're very wealthy people. So the minute money gets into it, the liberatory value of it changes. I'm absolutely 100% in favor of a currency that allows me to buy drugs and guns on the internet without being tracked by the government. You're goddamn right I believe in that. Hell yes. However, the problem is that so much of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and everything like that has been picked up by these right-leaning forces. So unfortunately, in the left, it's been very bad-mouthed. I think there's a huge amount of potential there, as long as we keep the capitalists out of it. The minute, again, Bitcoin that is just bought en masse by all these wealthy people that can effectively start controlling it, it loses its value as a liberatory model. I think cryptocurrency should be embraced by the left. I think we should have a cryptocurrency designed for the left and designed for poor working people. When it's designed for poor working people, it actually becomes useful instead of, you read these stories about people trying to buy a fucking cupcake with Bitcoin, and it's fucking hilarious. Why doesn't it work? What the fuck? Yeah, then it's garbage. But if we want to develop a system where we can do things and basically live outside of the state, yeah, I think cryptocurrency has absolute value as long as it can remain usable and in the hands of the poor and allow me to buy high-octane drugs off the internet. I definitely want to make that very clear that I am in favor of high-octane drugs and firearms.
Of course.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Anybody in the audience have a question? Because I'm going to wrap this up unless someone steps up and asks a question. Okay.
Not even Autumn shirt. I'm disappointed now. Now you tell him I'm angry at him now.
Okay, he's angry at you. He's just the videographer, he says.
Son of a
Bones.
bitch.
I don't know. I think this was an amazing experience for all involved. I'm only speaking for myself, of course, but I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your hectic schedule to speak with us today.
Oh, not a problem. And again, to all those people, the world is changing, the climate is changing, politics is changing, but we still have an opportunity and a chance to live the lives that we all want to live. Don't let anybody tell you that just because the world is changing, that somehow now you are less of a person, or that everything you ever dreamed for must change. While the shape may change, while the forces may change, you still have a future, a beautiful, wonderful future. The new earth will still be beautiful. There will be sorrow, there will be anger, there will be many species that we love dearly that disappear, but the earth, the same mother that birthed all of us, will not die. And she will need new children to hold her and listen to her. And that is our job.
Bones, thank you so much.
Been a
Really,
pleasure.
Thank you so much, guys. You want to hold on a moment, and I'll talk to you after this
sure.
in a second. Okay. I don't know how to wrap this up. This was a really interesting experience for everybody involved, I'm sure. Thank you so much for coming out and spending your Sunday evening with me, with Bones, with Dar Jamel. Good night. Thank you. Hey, Jordan. Can you help me talk with him? Sorry, I have you.
Yeah, are you wrapping up?
Yeah, I just want to talk to him privately for a moment.
That's totally good.
Son of a bitch.